What's up, and welcome to the Crude Oil Podcast, a weekly uncensored Edmonton Oilers podcast with your hosts, Sean and Greg. All right, welcome to the Offseason wish list episode of the Crude Oil Podcast for your 2022-2023 Edmonton Oilers. Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm very, very excited to talk about everything we have to talk about today. I can't stop thinking about this. Is like where I find my niche with hockey, where I can't stop theory crafting about what Edmonton needs to do.
I love the off-season, like, armchair expert stuff. I also love the fact that I'm sitting 6 feet away from you now.
Instead of 6,000 kilometers away?
No shit. We've got a lot of hockey stuff to get into. But before we do, please make sure to subscribe, listen, rate, like, and share. Whatever you guys can do, just help us get our voice out there, because we're trying to make your voice a little bit louder. We got some great feedback coming up later in the episode with some people and their thoughts for their off-season wish list, or what they'd like to see the Edmonton Oilers do. So the more voices we get out there, I think we can get a bigger consensus of what Oilers fans want to see. Did I forget anything, Sean? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think you got it all there.
Okay, I'm not going to forget now. The logo that you designed is fucking dynamite. I have to give that. We got some great feedback on that too. So I know I'm kind of pumping my own tires here in the same thing, but quick PSA, if you have children in the room, maybe now's a good time to let them, leave it, or you can scroll ahead five minutes. I need to talk about Pearson Airport, Sean.
Go ahead. Start ranting.
What a fucking unorganized shit show that place is. I understand this is a hockey podcast, but Ryan Whitney brought this up and it made headlines. This is also a hockey podcast that's 2 fucking days late because of this goddamn airport. We landed in Toronto with a 2.5-hour layover to our next flight back home to Edmonton, and we got off the plane. I understand there's staff shortages everywhere. It's just delays, whatever. That's fine. 2.5 hours. So we bust our balls to the customs, and the only way I can explain this is like a grocery store with a serpentine lineup for the counters, like the next available one. So we stand outside this grocery store, and we wait for us to be allowed into the building. And now when you're allowed into the building, every single row where the food is, or aisle, that would be where a scanner is to print off your declaration. And now when you get there, they point to what free scanner you have to go. We were in aisle 2. However, the lineup to the checkout counters, or the customs agents, goes through all the way through the serpentine lineup and then up and down every single goddamn aisle. So we print out our checkout, our declaration, and we go to the back of the line. However, the people who are at the last aisle before the checkout are jumping in fucking line. So we have people consistently butting us ahead of things. There's no organization. They're not doing anything to control that. And then we spend an hour and a half getting through that, and they make us go through fucking security again. Anybody who's been on a flight since September of 2001 knows that you're not allowed to bring anything more than 100 milliliters onto or past security, right? However, those same people also know that once you pass security, you can go to duty free and say buy a bottle of scotch for your dad. So when we did that in London, under the guise that we're not going to have to go through security again. So when we get to Toronto, you have to check that. You have to pull it out, put it in a little bag, and the receipt that you bought from duty free, and sure as shit, it gets pulled. So,
oh my god,
just no fucking census at all. We ended up missing our flight. There was 25 or 30 other people that were supposed to be home in Edmonton. The option were to take 2 different flights, wind up in Halifax, and then fly all the way back to Edmonton. And we lost a day, or we could come back. Well, today's Tuesday, so today. Just a fucking gong show. But that's why we're a couple days late. I do apologize. If you're going there, please bring all of the patience that you've ever built up in your entire life, because you're going to need it. Let's talk about some hockey. Holy crap.
Well, I'm glad you finally got that off your chest. And hopefully some other people can sympathize with you. Maybe you can talk to Whitney about it.
Yeah, and then get him on the show.
Exactly.
Okay, we have a lot to get through, but we have some, well, I guess it's relatively breaking news from different items that have happened in the hockey world, considering the guy that's standing behind the Oilers bench for the next 3 years.
Yeah, Jay Woodcroft's back. I think it was inevitable. I know a few fans were a little worried that it was taking so long. I think it's just the typical Oilers PTSD where you never really know what's going to happen with Edmonton, whether or not they're going to be like, we're fine, we'll sign Mike Babcock instead. And Woodcroft can be his assistant coach or something. He's got to learn shit like that. But I think it was the right decision. From what I understand, from what I was reading, I think one of the big sticking points was Woodcroft wants a lot more say on the roster and like who's called up and things like that, because more of that is cap management, and then he has to kind of do with what he has. And I feel that's because he has a lot of faith in his young guys. Like if you look at Broberg or Niemelainen coming up next year, or even Holloway, things of that nature. So I think that's probably the big sticking point of why it took as long as it did, but I think we're all happy it happened.
Yeah, I think it's about time too, because he's shown what he can do with, like, you look at a Ryan Mcleod and how much faith that he put in him. I also think that it says a lot too when you see a guy like Tyler Benson, who had a hot minute in the NHL with Woodcroft as his coach, and then he gets sent down. Like, I think Woodcroft knows what he's getting, especially from that farm team, and he's not going to waste time with trying to make things work up at the big club. So I'm very excited to see him. Manson got extended as well, right?
Yeah, I think they're kind of stuck together like glue, because that was one of his big sticking points when he came up from Bakersfield in the first place, is that Manson was coming with him.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if they'll make any other changes to the coaching roster, because I think there's still a few people hanging around from the old
regime.
Yes, the old regime. And I will forever ask this question: how long will Dustin Schwartz last? Will he be here for the rest of our lives? Who knows? Yeah. What kind of dirt does he have on the entire organization that he's still there?
Yeah, I don't know. You would think that maybe there will be a change, but we'll see.
Here's my prediction: they fire Schwartz, Smith retires, Smith is the new goalie coach.
Oh, it's
bold prediction.
Where are you going with this? But yeah, no, that's definitely a possibility, I think. Do you think he'd jump into coaching right away?
Maybe. They'll pay him $2.3 million, just like his contract. It's a new way of circumventing the cap.
Oh, that could work. Other big news, Kuzmenko signs with the Canucks. He kind of did the tour, trying to... it's like when, those college athletes get... familiarized with all those different colleges where they want to go. I don't love it when players have never played an NHL game, and then they can kind of attract all the attention, and you have teams flirting with them, trying to sell them stuff. So I mean, I personally I get the fact that he had success in Russia, but I personally, I'm not too worried about it. I know that you have some other thoughts, specifically like when it comes to the salary for what he...
Yeah, like the one thing that I think is a good thing is that for at least his first year, he's limited to an entry-level contract, right? So it's maximum $925,000. So that's what he signed with the Canucks. But so that makes it so you can't just like tempt these free agents with like, say he like originally was drafted when he was 18 by San Jose or something. And then when he was like 20 years old thinking about coming over, what if like Edmonton gave him a call and was like, hey, if you wait until you're 26, we'll give you like 8x8 or something like that. He's like, ooh, okay, well, maybe I'll wait. So, but regardless, he has to come and deal with that first year of his contract regardless. And people will see how he performs, and whether or not that's good for him is up to him. So, but I think there was two main reasons. I know a lot of people are disappointed because it could have been similar to Kane. Like, obviously not, probably wouldn't be the same impact, but you get an asset for free and for cheap on top of that. But the big things that probably drew him to Vancouver is, like, yes, he could have played with McDavid and or Draisaitl in Edmonton, but in Vancouver, he does get to play with one of, like, Pettersson or Horvat. So it's like, it's a downgrade, obviously, but they're still good players. Plus, I think he's been promised like first power play time.
Yeah,
Because there's no way he's getting
too.
on the power play in Edmonton.
No.
So I think 5-on-5 he probably could put more points up on Edmonton if they would have, and then it could have gave us a little bit of a, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll just say like a parachute for if Kane decides not to sign with us or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So something to save us. But ultimately he didn't sign with us, so it is what it is. He could end up just like Vadim Shipashev with Vegas, where he plays like 5 NHL games and then says fuck this and goes back to Russia.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the other thing I heard too is that one of the big things he was impressed was with the length of travel that people drove to go meet him. I think they met in Michigan or something. Bruce Boudreau drove like 6 hours.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah.
Jeez.
If that wasn't like a PR stunt, like I don't know what is. You're telling me you can't find a flight for an NHL coach? I don't know.
Well, that's true, but there's also one other thing I wanted to mention about that is I can't pronounce his first name, but Podkolzin on Vancouver. They played together for 4 years in Russia, or 3 years, the past 3 years. So
okay,
they had that teammate connection, and Russians tend to not do overly well in Edmonton.
Yak City, bitch.
Well, you look at any of it. You look at like Shlepyshev, or who was the one guy who never really did anything, Mikhanov. I think everybody had big plans for him and nothing ever happened of it.
Well, didn't Konovalov just leave too?
Yeah, that's true. We'll get into that.
Yeah. I guess I'm jumping ahead.
Oh, that's okay, but yeah.
Yeah, so, well, I guess the other thing we want to note too is we're recording this while the NHL Awards are being handed out.
Did you see they just announced the Hart Trophy?
I did not.
Matthews.
Yeah, not surprised. As soon as he won the Lindsey, I wasn't shocked. Let Toronto have this win. They so desperately need something else other than we have the best player on the earth. I guess this just fuels the fire, but...
So, just for everybody listening who doesn't know yet, here are the trophies they announced. There's 5 trophies they announced today. Vezina was Shesterkin. No surprise there.
No.
Norris was Makar.
Fucking called it.
I think that one was up for debate with the Yossi one. I looked at they released the ballots already.
Yeah, how close?
And Yossi actually had more first place votes.
Oh.
But he was left off of a ballot too. Not even in the top 5 by one of the voters. So I'd like to see who that was, first of all.
Yeah.
But they each had the power just went out.
You're shitting me.
No.
Oh, fuck.
You're on a laptop though, right?
Are we still recording?
Maybe.
Holy shit, we're still recording.
What the fuck was I just saying? Okay, it was Makar and Yossi were the top 2, right? Makar had 1,631 points overall from his votes, and Yossi was 1,605 or 06, so a 25-point difference. So like if 2 votes would have been first for Yossi instead of Makar, Yossi would have won.
Yeah, I'm not shocked, but
I'm happy. I want Makar to win. I think he's proven in these playoffs that he is in fact the best, and I think he plays better defense than Yossi does. So ultimately, I think their offense is fairly close, but Makar's defense is much better than Yossi's, and that's the difference maker in that.
See, the only real trophy that I really cared about heading into this was the Calder.
Yeah, well, and Mort Seider won the Calder, which I'm very happy about.
Rightfully so.
I can just watch his hit highlights from his first year. It's reminding me a lot of Cronwall. It's very enjoyable.
Yeah, he's going to be a danger for a long, long time.
I think I saw he got like 170 out of about 190 first place votes.
Oh, wow.
So I think everybody can see how good he's going to be.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the last 2 ones that Austin Matthews has won is the Hart Trophy and the Ted Lindsey Trophy, which one of those I'm surprised by.
The Lindsey?
Yes.
Yeah.
I honestly, maybe it was Ted Lindsey voter fatigue from the players even, where they just were like, we can't vote McDavid again.
Yeah.
It's like, but I mean, Matthews did have a great year. He had like 60 goals in 72 games or something. Like, it's hard to argue with what he did.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised. And I'm a little bit disappointed, I guess, but at least it's hard to look at McDavid's season and having 125 points or whatever, and coming away with just like the Art Ross Trophy and none of the as voted on by player trophies. It just seems weird.
Yeah. All right, let's dive into it. we got a lot of meat and potatoes to get into. We're kind of going to break this up into 2 segments. We're going to go through all of the kind of free agents that the Oilers have coming up this offseason. We'll go through what our thoughts are and what we think they should do. We'll go through some of the rumored trade baitable players. I don't know how the hell you want to talk about or how you want to name that, and then also the potential retirements that seem to be rumored around everywhere. After that, we'll jump into kind of what we want to see in terms of our offseason wish list, whether it be trades or just signings from different free agents, because there's a lot floating around, a lot of different rumors, the Bobrovsky stuff being the most recent.
Gross. I don't even want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But we will.
Yeah. So let's dive straight into it. Sean made this fantastic spreadsheet to go through. You want to just go straight off the hop?
Yeah, we'll just go one by one. So I'll start with the first one, and that's Yamamoto.
Okay. Do you want to do all the RFAs first?
Yeah, we'll do the RFAs first,
Sure.
and start with the big 3. Yamamoto, I think, yes, Edmonton should absolutely sign him. I don't think he's there's no threat of an offer sheet on him. I just don't think he's quite that caliber of player. I think he's not at his ceiling per se, but I think what he produced this past season and in the playoffs especially, I think that's the expectation for Yamamoto going forward. If he performs lesser than that, you'll be disappointed. More so, great, but I think what we got this season is what, over the next 5 years or so, what I would like to see out of his career.
So you're not even thinking bridge deal, you're thinking long term, hey?
I'd like to go longer term, but it all depends on what he wants, I guess. Personally, I think we can only bridge people for so long.
Right.
So we don't really want, I don't think Yamamoto's going to keep improving to the point where it's like Nurse, where we bridge him 3 times and then have to sign him to this monster contract.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think if I were to predict Yamamoto's contract, I'd probably say a 3-year, $3 million contract.
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty reasonable.
Could 3 be up per year, right?
Yeah, it could be 3.5 even.
Yeah.
But anything over 4, I'd be disappointed in Holland for signing that contract.
I agree.
And that's $4 million, not 4 years. I'd be fine with 4 years, but $3 million AAV would be around where I'm happy.
Yep.
And considering our potential cap crunch, I think that'd be good.
Yeah. I would cap it at 2 years. Just looking at the contracts on the books for the next 2 years. The only big names right now that are coming off the books are Cassian and Fogel. And that kind of gives that little bridge to figure out what kind of Yamamoto you're going to have moving forward. I would give him, probably in that $3 million range. I don't know if I'd go over 3.5. I think 3.5 is even high. But I mean,
he did put up 20 goals this year.
I guess, yeah.
But I do agree that a bridge contract could be okay because he's put up 20 goals once.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm feeling more of the 3 than the 3.5 range. But a bridge might be good to see if he can do that again, because he has been grossly inconsistent throughout his career.
Yeah.
Where he has stretches like when he first came into the NHL in that first year, and then he has stretches where he doesn't score for 40 games.
Very true. All right, Ryan Mcleod.
I'll let you take this one to start.
Oh, man, I love Ryan Mcleod. I think I want him signed. I almost want to flirt with signing him a long-term right now.
How much would you give him long-term, though? Because he's going to want to get paid for what he thinks he can do, not what he's done.
Maybe long-term. Yeah, maybe long-term. I'm thinking 4 or 5 years as opposed to a quick bridge deal. I think you're looking between the $3 and $4 million range. That might be really high, but I think it might be a contract you're looking at 3 years down the road and being like, oh shit, we got a steal, in a Leon Draisaitl kind of thing.
I do agree with the fact that I'd like to sign him to a lower one for longer term. But if I were him, I wouldn't even think about that. If I were McLeod, I would take a 1 year, $2 million contract. And honestly, that might even be better for Edmonton next year, for example, because they can't sign these guys all to $3 to $5 million and expect to stay under the cap going into next year.
Yeah, that's true too.
That would be my expectation, is like a bridge deal for Mcleod especially. He's had the least amount of games in the NHL to prove what he can do. I think he's extremely valuable, and I think if I were him, I'd bet on myself.
Yeah, that's fair. You got to wonder, too, with his relationship with, I nearly said Todd McClellan.
Jeez.
With Jay Woodcroft, you got to wonder if he'd stick around just to kind of be under his wing for a little bit. But, yeah, I would give him zero issues for betting on himself. But yeah, that moves it to probably the most controversial player right now. Jesse Puljujärvi.
So
What do you do?
this is a difficult one. Like, obviously we should re-sign him.
Mm-hmm.
I think like not re-signing him is stupid. If we were to just like not qualify him and let him walk to free agency. And honestly, I could see Puljujärvi being a target for like an offer sheet around like $4.5 million or something. Like, I could see a team taking a stab at him at that amount. It's just a matter of who has the picks, maybe like an Ottawa or something like that.
Yeah.
Like Puljujärvi would fit their timeline and what they probably need on their roster. But ultimately, I would like to see a similar contract to Yamamoto. Personally, I would think it would be less for two reasons. One, he hasn't scored 20 goals yet. And two, he doesn't kill penalties.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he doesn't really play on the power play either, so his special teams isn't really there. So I think he's less valuable than Yamamoto is, personally. I know a lot of people like his size, but he doesn't use his size. So it's hard to be like, yeah, he's big. He's a big body. It's like, so what? If he just stands there, it doesn't matter. If he like skates around everybody, never hits anybody, then who cares how big you are? He still seems to get knocked off the puck easily sometimes. So
yeah, I don't know what to do about Puljujärvi. I don't think you give up on him right now. I think you try to give him a little bit of rope, but I don't think you can sign him to a long-term contract. I think it kind of helps out that he's an RFA, but I think what he signs for or what you offer him really plays into how the rest of the lineup shakes out.
I think that's true. Like, one of the things Edmonton needs to be careful, though, of is they don't have a lot of right wingers.
No.
They have Yamamoto. They have Puljujärvi.
Mm-hmm.
They have Cassian. Archibald's a UFA. We'll get to him.
Yeah.
And then Hyman can play on the right side, though he prefers the left. Personally, I would put him there just because of our left wing depth. But
I have an idea for that a little bit later.
Okay.
So
that's something they need to be careful of too. Like, we can't just like throw him away or even trade him and not have a plan for who else is going to play on that right side.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, the Tyler Benson experiment. Are we done with that? I just don't see him getting extended.
I would qualify him and sign him to a two-way deal.
Yeah? So,
because, I think he might be in like the Maroti tier where he's kind of just a perpetual AHLer. It's the classic tweener where you're not good enough to play in the NHL, but you're too good for the AHL kind of thing.
Yeah, I just don't even know. He's getting up there in age, and
I will say when he came in at the beginning of the year, he did have some good games where he came and brought it physically and had a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So, like, I could see him as an okay 13th forward to come in and insert some energy when they need it.
Yeah.
But whether or not they see it, like you said, Woodcroft didn't really give him much time once he was here. He kind of sent him right back down.
Yeah.
So maybe he just doesn't have a place on this team anymore. And I'd like to see him get a shot. And I just don't think it's going to be with Edmonton at this point in his career.
Yeah. And I think the next guy we're going to move into, Brendan Perlini, like, I think they're kind of interchangeable. I think Benson brings a lot more physicality to his game. I would take Perlini over Benson.
I would think so. Like, you mentioned Benson brings more physicality, but it's more like an Archibald physicality because he doesn't have a lot of size, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And like Perlini has the size, and he also has a wicked shot. So he could put up 10 goals if he played a full year playing on the fourth line just because he gets random shots that just so happen to go in throughout the year. And at the end of the day, though, neither one of them can play defense. Neither one of them kill penalties. And I'm a strong proponent that your bottom six needs to be able to kill penalties.
Yeah. Well, and Holland's even mentioned that too. Like, that's the bottom six that he tends to build his team around.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. So that kind of takes care of the RFAs. We might as well just mention all the updates here. Berglund, of course, signing with this is where I screw up all the names. He signed in the Swedish Hockey League, so he's gone. That's back home for him, hey?
Yeah, he's Swedish, so he's gone, which is unfortunate because he's one of our few like right defenseman prospects outside of him and like Desharnais.
Yeah.
So that's kind of potentially. I know it'll leave a hole in Bakersfield, but it leaves a potential call-up hole on our right side.
Yeah.
Because I heard a lot of whispers last year that they were like interested in Berglund, and I just think he probably got passed on the depth charts though by like obviously Broberg and Niemelainen moving up. And then there's still Sam Rukov, but those guys are all lefties. Whether or not they could play the right side, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I'm not heartbroken over that loss, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, it's the same with Safin signing with HC Sparta.
Yeah.
That kind of takes care of our RFAs that we have.
You know, I just want to say with Ostap Safin, or Safin, or however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
I still remember, this is really stupid, but I was playing like I think it was like NHL 12 or something like that, and I went through a draft and he was in it, so I drafted him, and he turned into like a 98 overall player.
That's unreal.
And I was like, then Edmonton drafted him. I was like, oh shit, this guy's sick. And then he's not in real life. He's not that good.
It's too funny when you get those like oddballs that turn out to be all-stars. Yeah. Okay, so that takes care of the RFAs. We'll move into the UFAs. Absolutely the biggest question mark, I would say, with this team is Evander Kane. Do you want to go on this?
Well, I think there's obviously interest in Kane re-signing here from both parties. And it just comes down to, first of all, that contract.
Yes.
That debacle that's going on with the NHL right now. How it's not even being arbitrated until after July 1st, which is an absolute joke.
It's fucking ridiculous.
So San Jose might get fucked over. Edmonton is getting fucked over. And whoever else might be interested in Kane is getting fucked over, because you're going to miss out on other free agents because you're hoping to sign Kane or something like that. And then they're going to reinstate his contract, and then San Jose is going to be like, oh, you got to give us a first round pick for his contract now.
Yeah. Be
like, no, fuck that.
It's ridiculous, because like you kind of get fleeced either way, especially if Edmonton's like, okay, we need to prepare to move on. In the case of we don't have the ability to, kind of get whatever discount that apparently is rumored that he'd take to come back and play in Edmonton. But how like, if it doesn't get settled to the middle of July, how do you leave $7 million in your payroll to pay a player that you don't know?
Well, Edmonton barely has the payroll to pay him that much.
Yeah,
either,
well, exactly.
I think there was one thing, I think it was Gregor who was talking about it, but essentially if this contract is arbitrated and it is voided, but he gets some of his money, then I believe he's limited to the maximum of what he is making on that contract that got voided. So if he gets $3 million out of that contract, then with Edmonton he can only sign for $4 million.
Right.
So then it nets to a total of $7.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the ideal situation, where he still gets his money, so he's happy, but Edmonton gets the cap relief because they can sign him to a lower AAV. And I think everybody would be happy in that situation, assuming San Jose's whatever, we'll pay to get rid of this guy. We don't really care. Yeah. So, but realistically, I don't know if it's going to be that. I think it's either going to be completely voided or it's going to be reinstated, and there's not really much wiggle room between those two.
Yeah, I would love to keep him. I say it's a 70% chance he's not here next year.
Well, what would you sign him for? Let's not talk about years. Let's just talk about AAV.
Yeah, the Oilers can't afford to go over 7.
Yeah,
I wouldn't afford to go over 7.5.
I wouldn't go over 6, honestly, just because of our 6 would be my max, because we just don't have the money.
This is a hot take. I think if you sign Kane to anything over 5.5, which it's going to have to be, you have to really consider the potential of moving out Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
Is it weird that I actually thought about that too?
Okay.
And I know everybody listening may think that is blasphemy. Yeah. But I think you have to consider it based off of his performance in the past couple years. Mind you, in these playoffs, he was injured.
Yes, that's true.
So I don't want to ride on him about his playoff performance, because he still did pretty good.
Yeah, he still timely goals, but
So, like, but it's just a matter of what we need. The only thing is, if you did trade Nuge, for example, it opens up a huge hole on your penalty kill.
Yep.
And that would mean either we need to find a fourth line center who's a good penalty killer, or we would have to put Draisaitl there.
Yeah, I've got an answer for that. It's the same player that I mentioned before.
And who's that?
Like for the Oilers to sign in the offseason. We'll get to it.
Okay.
This is a
I was
big
like,
wish list
Evander
line.
Kane kills penalties?
Oh, yeah. No. Gotcha. No, the same guy that was mentioned if Yarvey leaves.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, we'll see what happens there. Josh Archibald, the next guy.
I would not sign him.
I know. I don't give a shit about his decision. I guess he's got an exemption, so we don't have to worry about that anymore.
That's moot at this point.
But the inconsistency, he's taking up a bottom six role. He's kind of... I just don't see where he fits in the Oilers on a regular day-to-day lineup.
Like, I'm okay with him being our fourth line right wing or whatever if we have to in a pinch. But I think it's a mix of... I don't think Archibald wants to come back.
Yeah.
Because of everything that went on.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, I've seen the advanced stats, and they make Archibald look fucking terrible.
Yeah.
And in this case, I almost want to agree with them. Like, he might look like he's out there doing his best and trying his hardest, but one thing you have to keep in mind, most of the time anyways, for a forward, if they're hitting a lot, that tends to mean that they don't have possession of the puck a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm just ready to move on from him. So the next three that are listed, I think we can relatively rattle them off pretty quickly. Brassard, I'm okay with.
He was nothing.
It was
for
a flyer.
Edmonton.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, he brought nothing. I remember I was reading somebody during the playoffs, during the Colorado series, that they need to bring Brassard in. When he played that one game, he was a difference maker. I was like, who are you, first of all? And, like, what are you smoking? Where can I buy some?
Yeah.
Because, like, that shit's crazy.
Yeah. Colton Sevier.
Sevier, I would be okay with as, like, a 14th forward or something like that.
I was going to say, even just to keep in Baco, like,
Yeah.
I think he'd be great. But
yeah, if he's
other
okay
than
with
that-
coming back, I would be like, I could sign him to, like, league min and be okay with that, even a two-way contract.
Kyle Turris, the guy that we brought in for playoff experience and veteran leadership.
You re-sign him for his shootout specialty, and that's all you need. Whenever you think there's going to be a shootout, we do 5 defensemen, 13 forwards, keep Turris in the back for the shootout just in case. Keep him in your pocket.
Do you remember the goalie experiment back in like 2004, 2005 with Mike Morrison, where he like literally sat on the bench for the Oilers and like...
Oh yeah, because he was the like shootout specialist or whatever.
And he would just come in net to like every single shootout.
Yeah,
That's what I feel like Kyle Turris is, but for the offensive side of things.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think his career's pretty over. So he's probably done. And I was just thinking, first I was like, who would even sign him to give him a chance in the roster? Because he needs to play like top 6.
Yeah.
I was like, Arizona, but I was like, no, he doesn't like Arizona. He can't go there.
Yeah, very true. Probably the guy I am so like hell bent on the Oilers signing, Brett Kulak.
I'm 100% on board with that.
Oh my god, I love him. He's just such a solid defenseman.
I really, really enjoyed him in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he was playing with Barry, and honestly, the two of them together were quite good. I was surprised by how effective they were together, especially because Barry's not exactly the most effective defensive player, but he did really bring it in the playoffs, I will say.
Yeah.
He was playing on another level above where he usually can. And I'm hopeful that that's just because Kulak brought that out in him, and that's kind of what Kulak brings as a player.
Yeah.
But
you always need those guys to kind of elevate the others. I don't know what the contract would look like for him, but I'd be willing to move people to keep Kulak.
Well, Kulak, his contract that just ended was, I believe, $2.1 million AAV. So I would assume he would make that or a slight raise on that.
I honestly was thinking like around 3.5, 4.
I wouldn't go that far.
No,
he had a couple
like very
good
high
showing.
end though, like very high end.
Maybe the very high end on
Yeah.
a very short term contract, but like if we're doing like, let's say 3 years, I would do like 3x3 at most.
Yeah.
Like, you got to keep in mind, like, yes, he was effective. Yes, he did step into Nurse's role for 5 games this season and was serviceable in that role. Mm-hmm. But I'm not overpaying like a potentially replacement level defenseman just because he had one good showing this year. Like, there's a reason why he's hopped from team to team to team.
Yeah.
I think at one point he was on Calgary. And
he was.
The first time I ever heard his name was when he was there.
Yeah, he definitely was. Speaking of Calgary, the Cowboy, Chris Russell.
If I was Chris Russell, I think it might be time to retire, honestly. But with that being said, if he wants to sign league minimum to be our 8th defenseman or something, I'd be okay with that.
It's ironic. I was going to say almost the exact same thing. You get him at league minimum, or I don't think Chris Russell plays anywhere else.
No, at this point in his career, unless maybe Calgary's interested in a very depth defenseman, but
he's an Alberta guy too, right? Like,
well,
he's home.
Yeah, that's why I was leaning toward maybe Calgary because it's also in Alberta.
Yeah,
but
it is. Yeah.
Like, I would hope that like Broberg and Niemelainen are ahead of him in the depth charts, assuming we were to sign him, and everybody like Woodcroft and Holland agree with that and don't try to force Russell into the lineup when we don't need him to be.
Yeah.
Because like we need to get these young guys developed and get them NHL experience, because I'm so tired of that adage where it's like, oh, you only want one rookie on your defense. So I was like, well, if we do that, we're going to like just have a million rookies all the time because nobody's ever going to crack the lineup, and we're going to keep trading all our young defensemen.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Cooper Maroti.
I would re-sign him just as like on a 2-way deal, which like in a high AHL salary, just because like he's a good AHL player. He makes Bakersfield good. He's never going to crack the lineup.
See, I don't know. I like him in the lineup. I mean, it's hard to look at his like 1 point in one game kind of stats and get any kind of a sense of what he's going to get. I think he's been such a tenured Oiler for a long time. The Oilers need to sit down with him and say, hey, we want you here. But I think they have to be cognizant if they can't give him everyday numbers or at least a chance to crack the lineup, you got to let him go.
Well, like, the thing is, I just don't think he will make the roster if we were to sign him, because our center depth is McDavid, Draisaitl, Nuge, Mcleod, Ryan.
Yeah.
So, like, if there's any injuries to our centers, for example, we would more likely do 11-7 than we would call it Maroti.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And especially, like, you've seen when they do have injuries, too, and they still want to keep Ryan, they'll just flip him off to the wing. And
well, exactly.
Keep him in
like,
there,
they'll put Ryan on the right wing or something like that. So, like, if I were Maroti, I would leave because there's no opportunity in Edmonton for him.
Yeah.
Like, I hate to say it, and because like I like him, I want to listen to his music. Like, it's great to have that on the team. Why not? And I think it's just for his own career. If he wants to potentially make the NHL, he probably needs to leave.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So that cleans up everything other than the signings that have occurred. Brad Malone re-signing. Baco's got their captain back for 2 years. I like the signing there.
I mean, I think nobody was surprised. I saw a lot of people on Twitter after they signed that. They were like, why the fuck would you re-sign Malone?
Yeah.
This is a garbage signing. I was just like, he's Bakersfield's captain.
Yeah.
It's a 2-way deal, so he's getting reduced salary in the AHL. So, like, I don't see what the problem is.
Yeah.
You can bury that contract if you're so worried about that. He's going to play 90% of the season there anyways. If he's our 13th forward or our first call-up or something like that on forward, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Maybe the biggest news of everything that's happened in terms of players right now, Mikko Koskinen has decided to part ways with the Edmonton Oilers and head over to Switzerland to play. I mean, we all knew this was coming. I'm surprised we haven't brought it up in the podcast that we've had.
I think we kept forgetting about it because we were dealing with other news and such. And they didn't announce it, but like I guess HC Logano announced, they're like, hey, yeah, Koskinen's signing with us in the middle of their series with Calgary.
Yeah.
So everyone's just like, oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah. So maybe that might have been the reason why during the playoffs, like, they were less wanting to go to Koskinen, because they're like, why would we play this guy who's just leaving?
Yeah.
Like, personally, I think that was bad PR from Koskinen's front. That shouldn't have got leaked out in the first place, that he had already apparently signed a contract. But
I don't know if like all these players just assume that if they go and talk a different language that people aren't going to figure out what they're saying to like.
What's all those Yarvey interviews?
Like what the fuck?
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked Koskinen when he was good. I didn't like him when he was bad, and I mean, I was talk about a guy who ate more bullets for this team than anybody else in the past 5 years.
If there's one thing I do have is respect for Koskinen.
That's what I was getting
for
to.
everything he's done for this team. It's not his fault that somebody decided to throw a blank check at him. And be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll sign that. And be like, wait, shit. People are gonna shit on me for the next 3 years? Oh fuck, I shouldn't have signed this.
Yeah, it was what it was with him. I always thought he was a big goalie. I don't think he was a great goalie. I thought he was just big. But all the best to him. We still have a lot of stuff to go through, so we'll keep moving on. Do want to talk about the possibilities of some retirements. We'll get to that before we get into the trade bait, because I think that'll work nicely into our off-season wishes.
Sure. So the big one is, well, the more likely of the two is there's been rumors that Mike Smith is interested in potentially retiring. Mm-hmm. And I'm not opposed to that if he were to decide to, assuming we can fill in that role. Like, I just think this season, especially with his injuries at the beginning of the year, and apparently he was injured too during that Colorado series, and during the playoffs he had something that was apparently bothering him.
I mean, shocker.
Well, like, really, it's not that crazy to think that a 40-year-old goalie is having injury problems. Like, I'm sure he gets out of bed sometimes.
Exactly.
Is, like, losing his mind.
Yeah.
So if I were him, I would retire and then maybe look into that suggestion I had earlier. Future goalie coach Mike Smith, teach everybody to handle the puck.
Fuck, I'd take anyone over Dustin Schwartz now.
Exactly. So I think if I were a betting man, I would say Smith does retire. Mm-hmm. There has to be a reason they set up his contract the way they did. And just an FYI to anybody, there will not be any cap penalties for Edmonton if he were to retire. Mm-hmm. So generally, if if somebody signs a over 35 player to like a multi-year contract, then if they retire, then that cap gets it doesn't leave the books if they retire. Mm-hmm. However, one of the stipulations is if the pay goes down, I believe. So his salary is higher than his AAV next year. So if he retires, it won't count against the cap. So that's the big caveat. So it's the whole point of that was to get rid of those backdiving contracts.
Yeah.
So for example, if you were to sign a 36-year-old player to a 4-year contract, you pay him $10 million in the first year and then $1 million in the next 3 years or something to bring out the average to like 4 point something. Mm-hmm. So to avoid that, they put in this rule.
Yep.
So, and that's clearly why they structured the contract this way, or else they wouldn't have done it like this.
Yep. Yeah. I thought that was that's a great point to bring up. I don't see him with the Oilers next year. I think that does bring the Oilers into extreme dire straits when it comes to the goaltending position, though.
I mean, I think Skinner is going to be our backup next year. One thing to keep in mind about Skinner is he's waiver eligible next year. Yeah, no,
I just meant the fact that we do have Skinner, but we have Olivier Rodriguez, the next guy in line, and nothing else.
Well, like, obviously they need to find a way to get a starter, whether that's signing a guy in free agency or trade.
Yeah.
And then having Skinner as the backup and Rodriguez the third guy, I'd be fine with that. Mm-hmm. I'd love to get Rodriguez starter time in Bakersfield.
Absolutely.
To start developing him a little bit more.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other guys down there too. Like, I know that was one thing we did mention was Konovalov. He signed with a KHL team.
Right.
So he is gone, which is kind of depressing considering he was really good in the KHL. And there was a lot of high hopes for him coming over here, but I don't think his game translated particularly well. So it is what it is. We have a lot of goaltending prospects, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But who is that guy? Is it like Fanti or something?
I had it brought up. I was just trying to scroll down and see it.
So I've heard he is been pretty good.
Ryan Fanti.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of buzz around him right now. So Edmonton does have the goalie prospects to fill that void for Konovalov leaving. So I think it's fine. I'd like Rodriguez and Fanti, I guess, to split starts in Bakersfield next year. Yeah. I think I'd be okay with that. And worst case, we could probably pick up an Anton Forsberg on waivers or something like that.
Yeah. That moves us to Duncan Keith. I don't think he's going to retire. It'd be nice to get that 5+ off the books. I don't see him retiring. The other thing that kind of pisses me off about that is that recap that they're supposed to get, that was it $3.4 million
Yeah,
that
the
league
cap
just
credit.
arbitrarily decided that the Oilers don't get. Like,
The league is really good at arbitrarily fucking Edmonton over.
it's in the goddamn CBA. I nearly said CPA. But like how it just pisses me off. I don't get it.
Well, like, I understand why they're saying no, because they don't want to set the precedent that people start doing this, and
Right.
But you have to think that this trade only happened to a degree because Holland was aware of this.
That's what I mean.
And be like, okay, yeah, we want this. So, and then you'll retire, and then we'll have all this big cap credit and all this shit. So, like, I think it's, like, obviously not a non-zero chance that he retires. One of the big factors you have to consider is his actual salary next year is $1.5 million. So, it's like they could just, similar to the whole Mike Smith whatever situation I was talking about, they could just make him a consultant or a player development coach for a year at $1.5 million or something like that. Like, obviously, I'm sure there's cap circumvention rules around this shit, but like, it's something to consider. I'd love him if he was like not our D coach, but like something along that line. The assistant D coach to Manson or something like that.
Yeah, or in player development or something.
Yeah. But I'm sure he would rather go back to Chicago or something and do that. But
yeah. Oscar Clefbaum,
he's never coming back.
He's not coming back.
I put it on this list because I think it was more so there's been rumors that Edmonton might try to trade away his contract to like Arizona or something.
Yeah. Get that off the books.
I think that would be a good idea. Having LTIR isn't as useful as people think it is. So
no, I think also it adds an element of closure. We can finally just like
move on.
Yeah, because
I want to hear Arizona Coyotes legend Oscar Clefbaum too. That'd be fun.
Oh my goodness!
It's like Detroit Red Wings legend Mike Modano, Detroit Red Wings legend Daniel Alfredson.
All right, moving into the trade bait stuff. This will tie into our off-season stuff. We're already 50 minutes into this podcast, so we'll try and be as concise as we can because I mean the options here are endless. But there's 4 guys that we've kind of brought up as trade bait. We'll start with Tyson Berry.
I'd like to see Berry gone.
Yeah.
It's nothing against Berry, but if he's third pairing, getting paid what he gets paid, when Bouchard can bring the same thing on the power play, for example, Berry doesn't kill penalties. I just think he isn't what we need right now. And I think he has value.
I think so too. I think we got a good reminder in playoffs. I see. That's the thing is like I don't know what you'd get back, but a lot of these players that we do bring up, with the exception of the last one that we'll get into, I think a lot of it just has to do with cap space, and so.
Well, that's the thing. It's nothing against these players. Maybe a little bit on the second one. Not a huge fan of the way he's played, but we'll get to that. Yeah, their contracts just don't fit what we need right now. They're kind of a little balloon contracts that were kind of made in a panic, I think, at the time. Especially this Barry one. I think when Larson was leaving, we got CC, and they're like, okay, well, now what? I think we would have been happy with CC and Larson. Like, I think that would have been a good decor if we would have got both of them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, Bouchard has come and shown that he can do it.
Yeah.
He barely had any power play time compared to Barry, and he still put up 45 points or whatever. So I think he can come in and step into that role and be more than serviceable.
Yeah. I think you need to really look at moving someone off the D. Barry would be my number one. This might be a hot take, but I would consider number 2 moving in terms of if you can't make any other changes and you can't find a fit for Barry, I would consider trading CC.
Who else on the right side is there, though, if you do that? Who else plays on the right side if you trade CC?
But you need to create room to bring up from your farm team, right?
Yeah, but we don't have guys on our farm team who are on the right side.
Yeah, but you also have a guy who's probably at his highest trade value that he's ever been.
Like, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
But I personally think that is a terrible idea. CC's way too important to this team.
So if you can't trade Berry and you can't get rid of Duncan Keith, what do?
Well, you have to stick with them for another year. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm not trading good players just because we can't get rid of our bad players.
And then we get exposed again every year, like in playoffs.
Well, still, like, I don't think that helps the team at all. I think it just, like, defense as whole, we're trading probably our best offensive defenseman. And we're like, okay, this is improving our team. Like, no, it's doing the complete opposite. I think for his contract, CC brings so much value.
Yeah,
for what he's getting paid.
And I'm saying this being a huge CC fan. I'm just throwing this out there because the Oilers have to do something on defense. And if they can't get rid of Berry and you don't want to go the CC route, you maybe have to look at letting go of Kulak.
Well, I'd be more comfortable letting go of Kulak than CC. Because we have left side guys to come up. Like Broberg can come in, Nhl can come in.
Yeah.
Sam Marukov maybe takes a big step in the offseason. He can come in.
Yeah.
And on our right side, we just don't have the players to come up to fill that void.
Yeah.
I know it's not a perfect situation, but I'd rather not like have a top 4 right side defenseman of Barry Bouchard again and have like Broberg on the third pairing on that right side. I just think having CC there really stabilizes things.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
I know where you're coming from, but I personally just think that's a terrible idea.
No, I just they have to do something. And if they can't
agree they have to do something.
Yeah. If you could get a bucket of pucks for Barry, fine.
Well, the thing is they can get value for Barry. It's not like these next ones which will be a contract dump. You probably can get something in return for Barry that's valuable to your team.
Yeah, I mean, we could go for days and days on this one. Zach Cassian, number 2.
So the big thing with Cassian is obviously we want to trade him, but he lacks what Barry does, and that is value. Mm-hmm. Cassian doesn't really bring much outside of saying that he can occasionally play on McDavid's wing. So, and like his occasional physicality that he tends to never bring. So personally, I would love to trade Cassian for like a 6th round pick or something like that to a young team who maybe needs a enforcer style player or something like that, like in Ottawa with all their young guys, especially because they don't have Mark Borowiecki anymore over there. They might need a big bald man on their team to protect them all.
Yeah.
But from what I've been reading, a lot of people don't think he has value. Yeah. So that brings up the possibility of a buyout.
Right.
Because Cassian is the most likely player to get bought out on the team.
Yep.
And the big thing with that buyout is it opens up quite a bit of space, especially in the first year that they buy him out. So if they were to buy him out, his contract would only be $667,000 next year.
Yeah.
Which is like $2.5 million of cap space from that next year.
Yeah.
And then it's $1.87 million the next year, and then $967,000 the next 2 years. The issue is, I fucking hate dead cap space.
I was gonna say, then you're just dealing with like Sekera's off the books after next year, and then you're just replacing him with even more money of dead cap room.
Well, that's the thing is like you're replacing the dead cap space, and I fucking hate it because it's just a player that's not on your team. You're paying like you hate a guy so much you're paying for him to not be on your team.
Yeah,
and we have 3 to 4 years on the McDavid Draisaitl contracts, and that is the length of this buyout. It's not like he has 1 year left; it'll be done in 2 years, and then we'll have all this cap space in year 3 and 4 of that situation. So, personally, I don't think it's worth it. I'd rather like number one trade him. No salary coming back the other way. That's the perfect situation, unless like maybe we can get a 4th liner who kills penalties, even if he's similar contract or something like that.
The other thing that I keep looking at, and I'm with you on this one, a lot of people looking at like, oh, they can't get rid of Cassian. Look at like how much McDavid gels around him, and like Cassian's not an idiot. Like there's a good chance that this guy's just soaking up the time that he's having. Like all those pictures and the videos of him like being like the glue guy in the room, like this is a guy who's soaking up the time that he has in the NHL. It may be coming to an end for him, and maybe he knows that.
I think it absolutely is. Like I could see a team taking a flyer on wanting a tough guy, like I said, on their team to protect their young guys. But will they want that in 2 years? Like I don't know if I want 3 years from now, Cassian on my team.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yep.
So ultimately, I think in a perfect world, he would get traded. I think there's a high likelihood he'll get bought out.
Yeah.
Just because if they can't find a suitor, like, what can you do? But I think, like I mentioned, I think Ottawa would be the perfect team. Even like an LA and Anaheim or something like that. They have all these young guys that Cassian has experience playing with skilled players. So he can play with them and play that Semenko role or something for the last couple years of his contract here.
Yeah. Warren Foegele.
So this has nothing to do with Foegele himself. I think he's been a pretty serviceable player for Edmonton. He's the most snake-bitten man I've ever seen in my life. And I think that extension was way too aggressive from Ken Holland when we traded for him. I'm not a fan of extending a guy before we really know what he's bringing.
I hate those.
Imagine if it was a 1-year deal and then we'd be like debating whether or not we want to re-sign him, and we would to like a $1 million contract or something right now. So I think Foegele, similarly, somewhere between Berry and Cassian, he has value. So I think you can get something for him. But Foegele needs to learn how to kill penalties or something so he can actually get into the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what you wind up doing with him. I'm with you. Like, I just don't see a fit with him, especially in the bottom six, especially if we want to start seeing these young guys moving up and making their way onto the team, playing regular minutes. So I don't know. I don't know what we wind up doing. But that kind of brings us up to the last guy that's kind of trade bait. It's going to be tough to really wrap our heads around what everything can or what can happen. But Jesse Yarvey sitting in on the trade bait line. I mean, it kind of depends on how everything else shakes out with this team and where we end up. I don't know what you do with him. I really don't.
Well, the big thing with Yarvey and why I have him in this trade bait section is for any trades, if we're going to talk about those, he's probably the main piece in all of them. That and our first round pick for any significant trades for a roster player that we really want on this team. I think in a perfect world, I'd love to re-sign him to a reasonable contract, and he comes in and puts up 20 to 25 goals, is good defensively, has the similar stats as he had this year. Like, his defensive stats were fantastic this year. You can't argue with the details, but he just seems like he's never gelled with the team and stuff. We've already talked about Yarvey, so I don't want to dig too much into it, but like I mentioned, he's the biggest trade chip we have outside of our first round pick.
Yeah. So I think the best place from here is just to flip over into our wish list. I'm just going to jump in because we were talking about a replacement, or I was talking about a replacement with Yarvey. If you can't sign him and you're looking at probably a salary equivalent player that you're going to need to replace, I think one guy that the Oilers could really take a look and take a run at would be Vinnie Trochek. He plays center. He flips over to the right wing. He's a right-hand shot. He can fit the role on your penalty kill. He puts up lots of goals. It's just when you look at his cap hit, you're gonna probably pay a little bit more than you would for a Yarvey to keep him. It's just, I don't know. I would love to see him in an Oilers jersey.
Well, I think the big thing with Trochek is he's currently on a little bit of a inflated contract that he signed with Florida. So I don't know necessarily if that contract is reasonable to expect him to re-sign for something like that.
Yeah, I'd be
because he's at what, 4.5 or something like that. Sorry, I'm just opening it right now.
No, he's a little bit higher. His cap hit is
4.7.
4.75. Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's probably not making that again. He'd be around probably a $4 million player. So like you said, he would pay more, but I do think he brings more to the team. So I never actually thought too much about him, and he gives us that like potential right winger too to add more depth. Like why can't we have both of them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see that. It's just a matter because I'm pretty sure from what I'm aware of, there's a lot of interest in him.
Oh yeah.
So I think there might be a bit of a bidding war, and with Yarvey, he's an RFA, so we have control.
Yeah.
So I think it might be more reasonable to stick with that, but I could see them definitely doing that. On my wish list, I have on the right side, and this is prefacing trading Berry for somebody or something.
Okay.
Josh Manson.
Okay.
I know that...
It's a little bit of a switch in like the type of player you get, though.
Well, that's perfectly fine. I think he's the exact type of player that we need, especially on that right side, because our young left guys outside of Niemelainen, they're more offensive, good skating defensemen, and I think Manson complements that really well. So, like, say, for example, hypothetically, Keith retires, we trade Berry. Then we have Narcisi, we have Kulak Bouchard, and then we have Broberg Manson, or some combination of those players.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is an exponentially better decor than what we had this year. So it's just a matter of him proving in the in the Stanley Cup Finals right now, how good of a player he can be and how effective he is in the playoffs. I think that might be driving up his price a little bit. We have the draw of his dad, but he's a hometown boy, isn't he? Is he from here?
I don't know.
I can't remember. But with that being said, sometimes that's just as much of a deterrent as it is a draw.
Yeah.
So it could impact that pretty negatively.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. I think that would be a good fit here. The only thing is, like, does it create a weird thing with your dad?
Well, that's the thing, having him be your D coach. But as long as... I don't think Dave Manson is the type of guy who gives people special treatment.
Oh, I definitely don't either. I just wonder... I wonder more so about the other players. But, I mean, they're professionals. They should be able to get over that. You'd think.
I mean, I'm sure growing up he played for his dad when he was in, like, minor hockey and stuff, when his dad was filling in for coach and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I think it would be a good idea. It's the same thing with, like, the talks about bringing in DeBrusk or something like that.
That would be nice.
Like, there's a lot of rumors about that have been swirling for the past 2 years, but people are like, does he want to come play in his hometown? Same with Carter Hart out of Philly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Who else is on your wish list?
Honestly, I don't have a ton of specifics. Like, just looking at some of the things, I want to stay away from a lot of the big names that are out there. I think there's going to be a lot of players who are overvalued and overpaid this off season. I mean, where do you fit them in the lineup, right?
Who are we talking about here?
I'm just thinking, like, anyone right now. There's so much stuff that has to happen in the couple weeks leading up to free agency that I just don't know whether or not the Oilers can really evaluate what holes or what people they want to bring in. Yeah. That's why Vinnie Trochek's like the big one for me in terms of things that you'd like to see. And then the other big hole that I think they have to address is goaltending. Now, I know there's a couple different options that are out there. I've heard Darcy Kemper's name floated around. I know, yeah, Sean just like, meh.
Grimaced a little bit.
Yeah. And then there's Marc-Andre Fleury, but I don't think he'd come here.
No, I think he made that pretty clear that he's not going to come here.
And then the big news, which has kind of been floated around, is Florida's almost willing to retain half the salary for Bobrovsky.
I do not want to touch Bobrovsky with a 10-foot pole. I have no interest in that.
Yeah.
Like, even a half retained, that's $5 million for another 4 years. We're going to have another potential Koskinen in our hands. His numbers, well, they have improved this year, are still not great.
Yeah.
And personally, for what I believe is an NHL, a contending level goaltender that we need. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not saying he has to be Shesterkin or Vasilevsky, but he needs to be able to put up like a 920 in the playoffs minimum.
Yeah.
So
I'd be interested to see the Oilers maybe go, because the way I see it is I see Skinner right now as the front runner for the starting position, but not this year. I think long term he's the guy. I think he needs a year of playing solid backup minutes.
Well, who are they going to get for a year, though?
That's what I mean.
Who's going to be able to come in?
Just looking at if you can find a way to maybe look at a Jack Campbell, bring him in. I know he had a terrible back end, but like,
he's going to want to sign like a 5-year deal, though. He's got to, like, as Campbell, he's looking to probably cash in right now for sure.
Yeah.
Like, and somebody's going to overpay him like $5-6 million. I guarantee it. Whether it's Toronto or somebody else, Toronto might be desperate and realize that there's no better goalies on the market. But I'm pro Gibson. I have been for years and years and years.
You
I've
beat me to
wanted
the
him
punch.
here.
Yeah.
But the only caveat with Gibson is, well, there's two caveats, is that he struggled a bit the past few years.
Yep.
And I personally think that part of that is Anaheim's started rebuilding.
Yep.
So they've been slowly trading out all their defensemen. Like they lost Shea Theodore. They lost Hampus Lindholm. They lost Brandon Montour. They just lost Josh Manson. And there's just like slowly been turning over.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the reason. They've been switching coaches in front of him. So there's different defensive systems that he hasn't been able to get used to. Dallas Eakins is your coach, so that's never good. Ultimately, I'd like to get him, but the other caveat that I wanted to mention is I'm afraid of what it'll take to get him to come here. Like in terms of we're going to have to give up a first. What I would predict if we were to make that trade would be a first, Berry, and Yarvey. And maybe even like something else on their end to swap a shitty contract, Cassian, for somebody else or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to take a lot to get him out of Anaheim. Any other players on your wish list before we jump to the...
There was one other player
comments?
on my wish list.
Sure.
Who is a unrestricted free agent, I think would fit great on the fourth line.
Okay.
And that's Andrew Cagliano.
Interesting.
He's looked really good, honestly, as a fourth line player. He kills penalties, all that. He can play wing, he can play center. And who knows, maybe he wants to come back if he's interested in that.
And he goes back to like the holes you were mentioning in the team before. Like he would slot into that like bottom six quite nicely.
Yeah, I think so. He's very versatile and can do a lot of things. And I think he would come fairly cheap, probably less than 2.
As long as he's not taking 3 penalties a game like he did last night. What a rarity, though.
I mean, when you're losing 6-2, it's hard not to get frustrated and take penalties.
The other thing about him is, and especially knowing his career too, is you're getting a reliable workhorse. Like,
oh, exactly. He comes to the rink every day and plays the same consistent game and plays hard.
Yeah.
It's like a lesser Hyman to a degree.
Yeah. So the other thing that I just wanted to get your thoughts before we jump in to where we're going in the holy crap, get your thoughts together, Greg. Just the comments. I'm trying to do 2 things at once and my brain's like short circuiting. Do we see Dylan Holloway in the Oilers lineup next year?
Every prediction and projection I've thought of has him there.
Yeah.
Whether it's second, first, or third line left wing. I think he fits there quite well.
Yeah.
And that's why I would put Hyman on the right. So like I think ideally in this moment, my top 9 would be some combination of McDavid, Kane, Hyman, Nuge, Draisaitl, Yamamoto, Mcleod, Yarvey, and Holloway. And however you want to organize those 9 players, that would be kind of what I would project the roster to be if we were to re-sign everybody.
And that's how I saw it too. That's kind of the reason I brought up the Ryan Nugent-Hopkins thing, because I think there has to be an odd man out depending on who you're going to get. I think the Oilers would be doing him a disservice to be playing like third line minutes, fourth line minutes. Like he needs to get that shot, get that immediate boost with playing with good players.
I think the one thing with Nuge though is he still gets a lot of minutes because even if he's playing on the third line.
I'm talking about Holloway.
Oh, sorry. I was talking about Nuge. It's like he's playing third line minutes.
Yeah, no.
But he's on first power play and penalty kill.
Yeah.
So that's great. But sorry, keep going on your...
No. I was just... If the Oilers bring up Holloway, I think it's a disservice to stick him on the third line and play with...
play with Ryan Mcleod and Jesse Puljujarvi? How's that a disservice?
Huh?
How is that a disservice to play with Mcleod and Puljujarvi on the third line?
You're playing with 2, like, NHLers who have next to no experience.
So?
They
could put Mcleod in the top 6 and put Nuge on the third line center, like I just mentioned.
No, that's fine. Like
I don't think that's a disservice. Let's get a kid line going. Why not? Work for the Rangers.
Yeah. I just mean, how many times do we see that the flip with the third line? It's going to be like a Derek Ryan playing on there, and then a Warren Fogle that you have to keep in mind as well. Well,
I think ideally those guys would be on our fourth line next year.
Yeah. I would love to see him playing meaningful minutes right off the hop. I think a line 2 would be perfect for him.
If he played a full season
in
Bakersfield last year, I would say that they could play him in the top 6 next year. But I don't think that's a good idea to inject a rookie into the top 6. So if you're playing with McDavid, then you're going to be playing against the best defenseman on the other team every night. And Draisaitl, like you mentioned, if you're playing with Draisaitl, it could be the same thing. You're still playing against like the top 4 defensemen. But if you're on the third line, you tend to play against the bottom pair defensemen. Yeah. Hypothetically, anyway.
Yeah, and I guess it depends where, like, who all signs and where you're going to play him. Like, I'm not saying you even have to, get him past his limited games.
Yeah.
But I think you got to start him with an opportunity to succeed because, I mean, I get it. The Oilers have been historically terrible for throwing guys top-line minutes as soon as they get into the NHL. But you're going to play with Connor McDavid or you're going to play with a Leon Draisaitl. Like,
are you doing a disservice to Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl by playing Holloway on their lines?
For the first 6 games of the year, I would say no.
That's fair.
But, yeah.
This Holloway, I think it depends on how he does an exhibition.
That's true.
If he can show that
he's
he's ready. Because you got to keep in mind, Mcleod played exhibition last year and played like shit.
Yeah.
So he got sent back to the AHL and refined his game for like 20 games and then came back up.
Yeah.
So, like, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but after years of bad playing time minutes and stuff for all these players, they're young guys, I'm very hesitant to put a guy into a position like that.
That's fair. Yeah, I guess we'll wind up seeing there's so many things that could happen that could get us there. All right, we have a couple minutes here. This has been the longest podcast to date. Look at us go.
I know, we just keep talking. And we're in this super hot fucking room. I'm just sweating right now.
All right. It's important, but we'll still get through it. We'll try not to rip through everything. We asked you send us your off-season wish lists and predictions. We got a couple responses. So we'll start with Oms. This is probably the one I agree with the most. He says, keep Yamamoto and Yarvey. No need either one not to be on the roster next season at the expense of anyone unless the trade is a legitimate upgrade and a long-term solution.
Well, that comes back to like Yarvey, for example, being a trade piece and getting a number 1 goalie.
Yeah.
Or a top 4 defenseman or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would agree with that. I don't think Yamamoto's going to get traded personally.
No.
I don't think he's even really being considered to be traded. But I don't know. I think, like I mentioned, their right side is weak without both of them. So it's kind of hard. I'd more prefer to trade Bourgault than trade one of those guys, honestly.
Right.
Because I don't want to mess with the roster.
Well, and speaking of young guys and creating room for them too, our next comment comes from Nick saying that Carter Savoy makes the Gems and lights it up. I think it's a little early for that.
I'm not going to pencil Carter Savoy into the lineup, but it'd be pretty cool if he shows up and gets some games this year. I think he could get a 9-game audition.
Right.
But I don't see him making the roster this year.
Yeah, I would like to see him get some time, especially like the exhibition. The Oilers have finally got a farm team that could be really exciting to watch.
The fact that we're talking about these guys instead of like, Jujar Kerr is coming up.
Right.
Can't wait for this.
Right.
Like, we actually have guys who have top 6 upside potentially.
Yeah.
Which is rare for our forward core anyway. And even our defensemen. We have defensemen like Broberg, Samorukov, Niemelainen, Desharnais, like these guys who can come in and potentially make an impact. And I haven't mentioned Kesselring, but I wanted to mention him too.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting about him.
Yeah, dynamite. The other thing too, in a couple of years, Tyler Tullio. Whew, I'm getting excited. All right. We'll move to our next comment from Brad. He said trade for Gibson, re-sign Kane, or trade for Anderson and sign Nick Delorier.
I'm down for the sign Nick Delorier.
Yes.
I think like that's similar to the Cagliano thing where he'd be a great fit on like the 4th line. If I'm assuming based off of that spelling that it's Josh Anderson.
I think so.
Out of Montreal, and I am a strong proponent of saying fuck that.
Okay, thank you.
I do not want Josh Anderson's contract on this team. When they signed that, it seemed like a lot. He's injury prone. Like, yes, he plays physical and can score when he's healthy, but I just don't think he's what this team needs. It's just going to be an anchor, to be perfectly honest. And we're going to have to give up like significant assets for him. Maybe if it was they were trying to cap dump him and we get like something extra, we give him Cassian and they give us a 2nd-round pick too with it, I'd be like, sure. Like, we're upgrading Cassian for like $2 million, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm not trading for him unless it's a pretty even cap trade across the board.
to be fair, his comment was re-sign Kane or trade for Anderson. So,
Well, I thought these were two separate things. Or it's trade for Gibson, re-sign Kane, or trade for Anderson, and sign Nick Deslauriers. So those three things.
separate separate ideas there.
So yes, trade for Gibson. I'd be down to sign Nick Deslauriers, and I'd rather re-sign Kane than trade for Anderson 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. And then just the last comment, I think a first rounder gets traded at the draft in the Gibson deal. I think you're going to need your first plus.
I said like a first plus Berry plus a significant prospect or Jesse Puljujärvi.
You got to remember the Oilers are picking like 28th at least.
It's true. It's rare when you think Oilers first round pick, you think like, oh, that's a lottery pick. But no, not anymore, folks.
Yep. So, okay, we'll move on. Thanks, Brad. Tim writes in, says, Jarry, Kane, JP, Yamo, and Kulak signings. Trade Berry for Jarry.
Would Pittsburgh take that? And would you be interested in an injury-prone goalie and semi-inconsistent goalie in Tristan Jarry?
I think if you can get Tristan Jarry in and you can split duties with Skinner,
I mean, that'd be okay. Honestly,
I would not hate that.
This comment feels to me that it stinks of Edmonton Oil Kings bias from when Jarry played for them.
Yeah, but Jarry carried the Pittsburgh Penguins like 2 years ago to...
Yeah, but where was he in the playoffs? He was injured.
This year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the year before, he was the reason they lost in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, I'd like a proven playoff goalie, which is hard to find.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So, I'd be interested in Jarry, but I don't know if I'd be interested in trading Berry for Jarry, and honestly, I don't know how interested Pittsburgh would be in that deal.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then you gotta... Where does Berry slot for them?
Well, obviously, Letang is a free agent, I believe.
Yes.
So I'm assuming this comment would be assuming that Letang is not re-signing with Pittsburgh and they want a power play specialist of some sort. Because that's anybody who trades for Berry, that's what they want in the first place.
Yeah.
So I could see it in that sense if they don't re-sign Letang and they're like, okay, we need somebody to play that. Yeah. So, because Justin Schultz isn't there anymore, right? Or is he? I can't remember.
I think he's in Washington, or he bounced around. He keeps moving, but yeah. I wouldn't hate that. I just don't think that would be... I think the Oilers might even have to give up more.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I don't think Berry... I know I said Berry had value, but I don't think he's worth, a 1A goalie.
Yeah.
It would be Berry and a first for Jarry or something like that.
Yeah.
Which, not overly interested in giving up that much.
Yeah. Well, a lot of interesting takes, even in this room. A lot of different opinions. So
I mean, that's the point. We want to talk about random bullshit, and that's the beauty of the off season.
Yeah.
You theory craft and throw out random trades where you're like McDavid for Matthews 1-for-1. Who says no? Like that kind of shit. Like I want a Ted Lindsey Hart Trophy winner on my team.
No shit.
It's like, which one am I talking about? Who knows?
Well, we're 2 days late. We survived an ugly return home from Pearson Airport. We've survived a power outage in the middle of this goddamn podcast.
Fuck, I forgot about that.
We've done pretty good. We'll have to come up with some games or something because we'll have a week off for next week's edition. We'll figure something out.
Yeah,
there's lots to talk about. We can sit here and argue about Dylan Holloway for another 2 hours.
Do you know what I want to see from anybody listening to this? You can post something on Twitter, or you guys can DM us on Twitter. But I want to see trade speculation. Like, give me your best trade. Most likely trade. Don't give me any of that, like I just said, McDavid for fucking Scott Gomez's left leg or something like that. Like, I want to see an actual reasonable trade. Something that you think is reasonable that, like I mentioned, first, Puljujärvi and, like, Berry or Cassian's contracts or something for Gibson. So, like, something that seems more reasonable. But I want you to give me one that I've never thought of. Like, who's a player that we're not even thinking of? That you think has value, that you want on this team?
Well, Sean, the thing about that is if I wasn't thinking about him, I have no idea, man.
I guess this is more rhetorical, and I'm saying this to everybody who's listening.
Yeah, you guys figure it out. No. No, I think that's a great idea. We can look at a lot of different... And no fucking Leon Draisaitl to
Oh, can we
Detroit.
talk about that Detroit trade? That was so gross. I
Yeah,
fucking
let's
hated that Detroit trade.
My dad, I came home for Father's Day, and he's like, did you hear that he might go to Detroit? And I was like, there's no fucking shot in this planet that would happen.
The only way Draisaitl goes to Detroit, it starts at a minimum with one of Raymond and Seider, preferably Seider.
Yep.
Because we need defense. So, yeah, would I be okay with running McDavid, Nuge, Mcleod as our centers? Maybe, but only if we have more Seider on our defense to make up for that. So,
lots to come. So you've got, well, I guess we're recording this late, so you've got 4 days to think about it.
Yeah, pretty much until Sunday.
Yeah.
So
we'll figure it out. Longest podcast to date. Thanks for sticking in.
Well, if you let me sit here and just keep ranting about shit, I could keep going for another hour about random
we
shit.
will also sweat our balls off. So with that, we'll chat in a couple days.